So Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. quits after 5 rounds with Danny Jacobs. Chavez Jr., as I said in my the weigh-in reaction video, he missed weight by 5 pounds. They had Gabe Rosado in there as an opponent as well, just in case Danny Jacobs decided not to go ahead with this fight. He didn't. He chose to go ahead. And Chavez Jr., the kind of one memory I have of him in this fight is the kind of blue streak he had through his hair. Because to be fair, he gave a little bit more resistance than I thought he would. And early on in the first round, he landed a nice body shot on Danny Jacobs. But really, the shots that Chavez Jr. were landing were few far between. All the quality was coming from Danny Jacobs. Early on, in like the first 2 rounds, Danny Jacobs, I think, was taking a look, maybe trying to acclimatise himself because he's obviously up at a new weight, super middleweight. Danny Jacobs, of course, very, very big, very strong middleweight, going in there super middleweight against the guy who, Jesus, had to have been north of 190 pounds. Probably not north of 195, but definitely in the 190s. Definitely. So Jacobs was at a massive, and you could see it straight away in this fight, Jacobs was at a massive weight disadvantage, which is something that he's not used to. He's normally used to being the bigger guy. You know, against Golovkin, he was the bigger guy. Against most middleweights he fights, he's the bigger guy. So Jacobs used to that. Obviously, this is kind of new territory for him, and I don't think he'll ever be outweighed quite as significantly in his upcoming or future super middleweight fights than he was against Chavez Jr. Because, for argument's sake, if he was to fight Callum Smith, we know was a big boy, but even Callum Smith wouldn't even come close to what Chavez Jr. will do in terms of, weight, rehydration, cutting, stuff like that. So Chavez Jr., absolutely massive. You could see Chavez Jr. wanted to kind of use his size on Danny Jacobs and try and rough him up a bit. But once Danny Jacobs were into the fight, we started landing some right hands, some lead left hooks, was going to the body a good bit with Chavez Jr. So obviously Chavez Jr.'s body very weak because, of all the weight he's cutting. So that was kind of what Danny Jacobs did. They showed, I think it was the end of the 4th round, they showed Julio Cesar Chavez Sr. not looking too happy, shocked, because his son was once again, going the way he always does when he fights, world level fighters, getting a beating. Now, he did, to be fair, he showed more in this fight than he did against Canelo, because with Canelo, he just looked to survive. Whereas with this Danny Jacobs fight, he did look to try and impose himself, as I said earlier. But Chavez Jr., the issues are there for all the world to see with Chavez Jr. And I think he was with Freddie Roach in this fight. And I thought Freddie Roach stopped working with him years ago because the guy, for all intents, the guy's a prima donna. I think that's what Freddie Roach said. So, Chavez Jr., the flaws are there for all. They've been there for years. The guy is painfully slow, no defense, just uses his size, physicality. If you get someone in there who can, it's very hard to find someone bigger than him, but if someone can just match him for physicality and can punch a bit, they're going to do all kinds of problems. Or if you're a Canelo or Sergio Martinez who can just box him, you're just going to win. It doesn't take a lot to beat this guy. This guy essentially is, I don't want to call him a journeyman because he has some decent wins down at middleweight, but he is almost a Jan Pascal who just, comes, fights his world level guys, loses, and then goes home and then gets another call a few months later to take on another one. That's kind of where we stand with Julio Chavez Jr. And it was at the end, came into the 5th, mouth was bleeding, and referee went to him and he basically said no more, no mas. So that's how the fight ended. And Danny Jacobs, it was a workout. To be fair, I'm glad he took this fight because he didn't have to after the weigh-in. I'm glad he took this fight instead of fighting Gabe Rosado, because realistically Rosado, middleweight, Rosado is a decent journeyman, but Danny Jacobs would have probably learned a little bit more in this fight than he would have if he fought Rosado. Because, as I said, he's not used to being the smaller guy. He's not used to being significantly outweighed. And essentially what Rosado would have been a middleweight fight at super middleweight. So he done the right thing, I think, by taking this fight. I knew, to be fair, that Jacobs wasn't going to have any trouble in this fight. I was just questioning whether he'd stop him or not, and he did. Even though Chavez Jr. quit, still a stoppage. So those are my thoughts on this fight. Where does Chavez Jr. go? He is not like his father in the slightest. His father, Chavez Sr., what a spirited fighter, what a great fighter, historically great fighter, all-time great. The Meldrick Taylor fight be my favourite. The first Meldrick Taylor fight, I'd say, be my favourite. And his son, well, he's cut from different cloth, it seems. Which is often the case you have with, rich people. I don't want to say all of them, but I'll give you an example. Where I live in Dublin, there's a family that I grew up. Well, I didn't grow up with them. Well, I did, but I went to school with them, but I wasn't mates with them. And they are like, when I say rich, this family are stinking rich. They've 4 sons. Every single one of them has had. None of them have finished school. They've all had drug issues. They've all been to rehab, this, that, and the other. So that's maybe what growing up as a rich kid can happen. So those are my thoughts on this. Let me know what you think down below. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please leave a like if you did. Subscribe if you're new. Share it around if you felt it was useful. That does help the channel a lot. Grown a lot lately, so I'm hoping it stays that way. So yeah, let me know what you think down below. I hope you enjoyed this video. Subscribe if you're new. And as always, I will talk to you after.